Houston is actually the most diverse city in the United States. And I grew up in this city, and I lived here my whole life, and I did not know that we had such a blend of cultures. It's incredible. Over the last 10 years, I actually spent working in the international community, and one of the things that it did for me was it taught me to open my mind and to think a little bit differently and to be more compassionate, and ultimately, it helped me to make connections that I would not have otherwise made, and I'm better for it. Table of Nations is an expression of that kind of cultural richness. We're elevating the voices of immigrant and refugee chefs. And so whether they're first or second generation immigrant, they're refugee, wherever they've come from, we're telling their stories and elevating their voices. And what we're really doing is telling the story of humanity. Because yes, they have come from somewhere to where we live now, yet that's the human story. We've all come from somewhere, right? We all have parents and grandparents that have an origin somewhere else, and we are here now because of them. It's the story of origins. It's also the story of destinations. We're telling that story through food and through these different chefs and restaurant entrepreneurs, and really getting at a human story more than it is their story. I don't know if you're a religious person or not, but the story of the sojourner is very deeply spiritual, because in essence, we're all sojourners in the land. We've come from somewhere and we're going somewhere to a better country. And that it reminds me, there's this story in the Bible where people come together from these diverse backgrounds, different countries, different regions, and they form a church. It's the first church, actually. And they do a number of things together. They're talking about deep spiritual matters. They're serving one another. They're like sharing all their belongings and their possessions. They're doing all these things. But one of the things that they do that is repeated is that they eat. And I'm trying to imagine what that meal would have been like with all these different people around the table. And I'm sure it was epic. This is probably where the idea of a church potluck came from, to be honest. And it reminds me of this restaurant that I went to in my city where they served Afghan food. So there's a lot of people from Afghanistan here in my city. And I didn't even know that they were there. I didn't even know that we had this food. And it was incredible. And as you're eating this food, it breaks down barriers and it teaches me about these different people. One of the things I hope is that if we can get just one person to watch this film and then go try a dish from somewhere else that they've never tried before, that's a win for me. I also hope that the film can create some spiritual conversations and moments for people. I imagine a church small group or a friend group or a supper club, or it doesn't have to be associated with the church or anything, but I imagine people eating around a table, watching the film, and then having deep conversations about things that matter. And so that's my hope for the film, is that we would elevate these voices, we would have these conversations, and ultimately that it would inspire connection between people.